What's going on, guys? My name's Kenji and I'm a second year medical student studying in London. I'm back. I hope you've had an amazing summer. I know I definitely did, but I'm finally back in London in my accommodation and I'm ready to film some new videos. I've been getting so many requests about making a video about how I revised for my exams. So I thought I'd finally put together a video and tell you guys exactly how I prepare for my exams in medical school and how I prepared for my exams in A-levels, in my GCSEs, in my undergraduate degree in biomedical sciences and in my first year of medicine. So I really hope this video is somewhat informative to you guys. I hope it helps you with your revision strategy and maybe you can take a few tips from this video to help you with your revision. So I will put a timestamp somewhere on the screen about what I'll be talking about in the video and at exactly what time. So if you want to skip ahead to any part of the video, please go ahead. But before I start the video, I want to talk about a new program being run at King's, which I think will be really helpful to a lot of you guys. It's a new program called the K+ program. So it's basically a 2-year program run by King's, involving events, activities, and different workshops to support your university application and basically make you the best candidate for applying to university and once you're actually in university to reach your maximum potential. It's aimed at current year 12 students, so if you're in year 12 right now and you're thinking about applying to university, definitely check it out, and it's eligible for people who are studying in non-selective schools in Greater London. Inside the program, there's 7 different subject streams, so you can choose from dentistry, healthcare, which is obviously including medicine as well, law, history and politics, maths and computer science as well. So each subject stream is different and I definitely encourage you to go on the website and have a look at whatever subject stream matches you best. And the overall goal of the program is to basically support your application to university and make you a very, very competitive applicant for applying to the universities that you want to go to. One of the highlights of the program, which I thought was really cool, is a free summer school. And that basically has a number of activities, which again prepare you for your university application. So for example, in the summer school, there's a bunch of different academic tutorials where basically you're paired with a PhD tutor from King's. And they basically help you out with an independent academic project that you'll be working on throughout the summer. There's also a number of information sessions which are run during the summer program. So for example, they have workshops on applying for university. So it's all to do with student finance, making the UCAS application, writing your personal statement, and just a bunch of things that you need to know when applying for university. They also take you on a number of tours of the campus itself. So for example, you might be spending a lot of time in the library, revising, you might be walking around campus, having a tour of King's, and see the different campuses and facilities that we have at King's. There are also a number of group challenges and activities which again help you and prepare you to be the perfect applicant. And finally, of course, there are a number of different fun social activities that you get involved with as well. If you're watching this near to the time that I upload this video, the deadline for applying to the K+ program is on the 10th of October. So I do encourage you to go ahead and make an application. I guess you have nothing to lose. If you're watching this after the deadline, don't worry, they run this every single year. So if you missed out on this year, don't worry, just make your application in the next coming year. I honestly wish that when I was in year 12, I had a program like this. I really wish I actually did the program, but I had no idea about it. It really would have helped my application to university. So please do go check it out and let me know if you have any questions at all. I'll leave a link in the description to the website, so go check it out and let me know what you think. But on to the topic of the video. So again, this is the same revision strategy that I used in my A-levels, in my undergraduate degree in biomedical sciences, and in my first year medical school. And it's worked really well for me. Before I start, I want to say it's really, really important to try and find a revision style that matches for you. And this is the way I do it. It may not necessarily work for you, but do try it out and see whether or not it works for you. So the first really, really key point is if you want to do well in your exams, you have to work throughout the year. So for me, as soon as I finish my lectures, I go home and I spend a bit of time going through the lecture slides again, make sure I understand the lecture slides, and then I move on to making my notes. So I don't just do this in April when I'm 1 month away from the exam. Like I said, I do this throughout the whole year. So when it does come to the revision period in April, I have a set of notes which I'm ready, that I already understand, and I'm ready to memorize and learn in preparation for the exam. So the second thing I want to talk about is why in the hell that I make revision notes. It is quite time consuming. There's a number of reasons why I do make revision notes. The first reason is that when I'm in a lecture, I don't necessarily understand everything. So I need to go home and kind of do a bit of research, do a bit of thinking. And once I learn and understand what the lecture is on about, I needed a way to write this down so that in the future, if I ever come back to the lecture, I don't have to reteach myself. I already have a set of notes that I already understand and I'm ready to learn and memorize for the exam. The second reason that I do make revision notes is that it's a way for me to stay up to date with my knowledge. So if I didn't look at the lectures ever again and I only looked at them in April time, I would completely forget everything that I learned. But going over the lecture one more time and making good notes is a way for me to just kind of stay up to date with my knowledge. Because especially in medical school, when you're expected to know a lot of things all the time, it really is important to go over the lecture again and make notes so you're prepared for the hospital, for the GP, and for all your tutorials as well. Another reason is that making notes is a first step in consolidation. I'm not saying that making notes is the only way of doing it. I will go on to say how I learned these notes, but definitely making notes is the first step in understanding what you're supposed to know. Finally, making notes is a great way to put things into perspective and to put things down in a way that you understand. So in the future, if you ever want to kind of relook at the topic or reteach yourself, you always have a set of beautiful notes that you already understand and you can always come back to and look at in your future. Okay, so going on to how I actually make my notes. A few things is that when I make my notes, I try and make it as concise as possible. So I try and cut down on a lot of useless words. I really want it to be short and concise. I also find it very, very hard to remember paragraphs. So I try to use bullet points and spider diagrams mainly. I also like using pictures and diagrams. I find it very, very easy to remember pictures and diagrams compared to learning a whole paragraph. And lastly, the best thing to do is just break it down. So as I'm branching out in my spider diagrams, I like having 1 point per line to break it down and make it a lot easier for me to understand. Okay, so here's an example of my notes. On the right over here is one of the lectures that we had about a year ago. And on the left is the notes that I made on it. So I made this on paper and then I scanned it and uploaded it so I can have it so I can have an electronic copy. Yeah, so just to give you an example of how I start making my notes. So the first point of the lecture here is a cell. So a cell is a semi-independent living unit within the body in unicellular organisms, completely independent, in which I cited the mechanisms for metabolism, growth, and replication by division. It consists of an aqueous solution of organic molecules surrounded by membrane. So for me, honestly, I find it really, really hard if I was to memorize all of this. There's just too many words. It's very, very long, and it's just a massive paragraph. So what I do is I start off by writing cell. So because obviously that's the the main topic over here right now. So I start off by writing cell, and then I draw an arrow, and this is going to be my first point over here. So the first point I took is a cell is semi-independent living unit within the body. That's the very first point that I wanted to make. So I wrote that down straight over here. I drew another arrow for my second point. So the second point that we had is it's a site of mechanisms for metabolism, growth, and replication. So again, I went over here and I wrote it's a site of mechanisms for metabolism, growth, and replication. And the last and final point is it consists of an aqueous solution of organic molecules surrounded by membrane. So again, I wrote aqueous solution of organic molecules surrounded by membrane. So for me, honestly, this seems a lot easier to remember, a lot easier to learn, because I've broken down the cell into a number of different points rather than memorizing one full long sentence. I did the exact same thing for the next point. So for the organelle, it says an organelle is a subunit within a cell with a defined structure and performing specific integrated activities. Some are bounded by membranes, others are non-membranous, for example, ribosomes. So again, I wrote down organelle, and I drew my first arrow, and I wrote it's a subunit within a cell, because that was the very first point. The next thing that I wrote is it has a defined structure. So I wrote defined structure, and then another arrow in terms of what a defined structure means. So the second point was membrane or non-membrane bound, which is said over here. Some are membrane bound by membranes, others are not. And then I drew an arrow from membrane, meaning that it allows specific functional compartments to exist, meaning it allows specialized functional compartments to exist. And then moving on from this, I gave an example of pH and concentration. So as you can kind of see, it is bullet point, but it turns into kind of a bit of a spider diagram. And it's a lot easier to break it down from paragraph into actual individual points, which are a lot easier to understand and a lot easier to remember. So this is another example of one of my lecture notes. This was on the development of the GI tract. So the GI tract is basically your digestive system. In the lecture, there was a lot of words and there was a lot of essays, which I just didn't really like, and I found it so hard to remember. So what I did is I actually turned the lecture into pictures. So it's a bit complicated if you haven't done medicine before or a similar course. But the main thing I want you to take from this is to try and make as many diagrams as possible and as many pictures. So rather than having a whole paragraph of words, the primitive embryo can really be easily described in one whole paragraph, which you'd have to memorize. It's a lot easier to draw a picture. So rather than saying this primitive embryo is made up of the ectoderm, the mesoderm, and the endoderm, and that each region has a number of different cell types, it's a lot easier for me to draw a picture of an embryo, divide it into three, and have it saying ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm, and then off each area to draw extra arrows coming off of it into different types of cells. That's a lot easier than having a whole paragraph saying that for you. Another example was when we're talking about problems with the respiratory tract formation. Again, don't worry about all the jargon and all the difficult words. The main thing I want to say here is that I could have said atresia, fistula, and atresia plus fistula. I could have said all of this in one paragraph of writing. But what I did is I went on Google and I typed in what atresia is, and it gave me a picture which was similar to this. And I decided to draw a picture to demonstrate atresia. I went on to talk about the fistula as well. A fistula is when the respiratory tract is combined with the esophagus to form a fistula over here. Instead of having this in words, I drew a picture of them, kind of being joined together. And again, atresia plus fistula is a picture of them both together. And when I go on to think of respiratory tract formation problems in the exam, rather than memorizing words, I'll have these three pictures in my head. It'll be a lot easier to memorize and learn these three different things in nice colors, in a nice kind of picture form, in preparation for the exam. Again, as a final example, I was talking about the development of the pancreas. So again, it'll be very easy to write a whole paragraph on how the pancreas moves and combines. So initially, the pancreas is in two separate parts, and as you can see from this, the ventral pancreas moves over to the dorsal pancreas, and it combines to form the full-growing pancreas that we have in our body. Again, don't worry about the words, but I could have wrote this in a paragraph saying exactly what I just said. But when I think about the development of the pancreas, it's a lot easier to remember this picture, to remember how it was in two separate parts, to remember how there was an arrow here which showed me that it was twisting and turning to combine to form the full pancreas. It's a lot easier to have that than having a bunch of words, I promise you that. But yeah, that's how I write my notes. The main thing to take from this is that I'm not just copying off of slides. I'm trying to write it in my own words, trying to write it in a way that I understand. And also, if I find a better way of describing what a cell is, for example, if I'm on Wikipedia and I find a better way of describing what a cell is, then I'll take that information from Wikipedia and write it in my notes. If I also find anything additional which I think is quite important or something I find quite interesting, I'll go on to incorporate that in my notes. So it's a nice way of having an area with all of your thoughts, all of your ideas, and everything you've learned in one place. But yeah, the main point to take is to try and avoid paragraphs. So when I was in my GCSEs and when I was younger, I used to learn through memorizing paragraphs. The main thing that I do is try and avoid having these paragraphs. I like having small points in a kind of bullet point spider diagram way. It's a lot easier for your brain to understand and absorb that information. So previously I used to write my notes on paper. For my second year, I'm actually trying a new method of writing notes, which is using my new Samsung Galaxy Tab S4, I think it is. Yeah, Samsung Galaxy Tab S4. But it's a new way that I'm trying out to write my notes. I'm using an app called Squid, and it comes with a pen as well. And I'm doing the exact same thing that I do on paper, but just in an electronic way. This has a number of benefits, which I'm trying out right now. If you want me to do a separate video on that, let me know in the comments down below. But so far, it's been working pretty well. Whilst I'm writing my notes, if there's anything at all that I don't understand, my first kind of point of call is Google. So I run straight to Google. I'll type in whatever I'm trying to find out. So for example, I'm trying to find out what hyperpituitarism is. I'll go straight to Google, I'll type that in. As you know, Wikipedia is like the main source of all of the information. So I'll click on Wikipedia and try and understand it in that way. The next point of contact is probably my lecture capture. So as I mentioned in one of my other videos, in King's, all of our lectures are recorded. So if something in the lecture that I don't quite understand, I can go to lecture capture, watch it again and see if that helps. If that doesn't help, I probably just give up and agree that I'm stupid. No, I'm only joking. If that doesn't help, I go to this book or probably this book as well. You don't need books in medical school. This is more helpful in your clinical years. So this year it is quite helpful actually. So I'll go in here and I'll find out what the word means. You can also get this book as well, which is a concise medical dictionary from Oxford. This is pretty good as well. If there's any words you don't understand, you can run straight to it and just flick through. But just to let you know, I pretty much went through my whole first year without using any books. So these are just a plus if you want them. Definitely recommend this for your clinical years because you'll be running around the hospitals without your phone there to kind of Google and Wikipedia some things. So it really is helpful to have this. And by that point, if I really don't understand what's going on, I literally say screw it. If it comes up in the exam, I'm just going to guess it. No, I'm only joking. If you don't understand it, even then, I normally just call up my mates and see if they understand it and see if they can explain it to me in a better way. Another thing that really helps while I'm making my notes is to have two screens. So as you can see behind me, I have my big monitor, which I normally have Google up on there. So whenever I'm confused, I can look straight on the other screen, type it into Google. I also have my laptop, and on my laptop, I keep all of my lecture slides there. So in front of me, I'll keep the lecture. Down below, I'll have the paper and pen or my tab where I'll be writing the notes, and on the screen I'll have Google up, where I'll just basically be prepared to Google whatever I don't understand. So having two screens really helps. It's not essential, but I thought I'd just mention that. Okay, so that's taking notes. Once I've written the notes out, I put it into a file or a folder, and I leave it till April or until the exam period, or until I'm ready to revise my exams. I don't recommend doing that. If you do have time, it really helps to constantly go over your notes and just keep them fresh in your head. I find that with my lifestyle, I really don't have time to do that. So I make the notes, I'll put it in a folder, and I'll keep it for when it's time to revise for my exam. Okay, when April finally comes and it's time to revise for my exam, I get so excited because it means I get to bring out this bad boy and this as well. So I bring out my whiteboard and my markers, and this is the main way that I actually learn and memorize. So as an example, I'll bring out the whiteboard, I'll go through my notes at first, I'll try and memorize my notes from just reading them. And once I've learned my notes, I'll bring out the whiteboard and I'll try and test myself. So as an example, I'll write, let's say cell, and then I'll draw the arrow again, and I'll write, oh crap, I already forgot what cell is, but I'll write like cell, it's a semi-independent, blah, 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 whatever it is. I'm trying to remember the second point as well. Yeah, I really can't remember what it is, but yeah, I'll write the second point out and the third point. And then once I've written out exactly what a cell is, I'll bring out my notes and I'll compare and see if I got the answer right. So this is really called active recall. And it's actually scientifically proven to be one of the best methods of revising, because a lot of people just read their notes over and over and over again. And a lot of the times it doesn't work because that's a form of passive revision. So you're not actually testing yourself, you're not actually trying to use your information. So the whiteboard is where all the magic happens. I also try and use it to draw pictures and try and recall my information. So as an example again, if we're talking about the development of the pancreas, I'll start off by drawing the pancreas and how it had two separate kind of parts. So the dorsal pancreas over here and the ventral pancreas over here. And then I'll go on to draw the arrow showing how the dorsal pancreas moves to the ventral pancreas. Again, don't worry about the words, it doesn't matter. I'm just trying to show you, what I do. And then I'll go on to draw another arrow to show the fully formed pancreas. So that's a way that I test my memory. It helps me know that I actually remember what was going on. How the dorsal pancreas moves to join the ventral pancreas to form the main pancreas with the main pancreatic duct and the accessory ducts joining in as well. So yeah, that's just the way that I learn. So for me, the whiteboard is the main key. My notes are obviously the way that I write things down for me to understand, for me to remember. But for me to actually learn and memorize, the whiteboard is literally where all the magic happens. So one other thing that I use to sometimes test myself is something called Quizlet. So I think it's like Quizlet.com or something. It's a website that lets you use, that lets you create flashcards. So if I'm just trying to just completely memorize and not necessarily learn things, I'll use Quizlet, and I'll bring Quizlet up as a method for me to test myself, as a method for me to engage in active recall again, and just to learn a bunch of different names and words I just need to know. And once all of that is done, let's say for example, I've gone through all of my notes for an entire module, what I then tend to do is go right all the way back to the start. This is really annoying because it's really long. You've just spent the last week going over the whole module, but what I do is go all the way back to the beginning and go from the start to the end all over again. But this time I do it at a much quicker pace. Because I've already gone through it once and the information should be somewhat fresh in my mind, I'll go through it all again from the start to finish at a much quicker pace, drawing things really quickly on the whiteboard and trying to kind of make the links from the start of the lecture to the final lecture, and trying to understand how all the lectures work together to give off the entire understanding of the module. If I do have time, sometimes I honestly go through the module 2 or 3 or 4 times. There have been cases where I've literally just gone over the module twice because I have no time at all. But I do encourage you to go over the module as many times as possible for you to be able to actively recall any information that might be in any of the lectures. And then finally, when the morning of the exam comes, or the night before the exam, what I have to do, I always do this. If I have a 9 AM exam, I wake up super early to read through the entire module all over again. This time it's literally like opening up a book and opening up my notes and just literally flicking through it as fast as possible, kind of reading over the tough parts, reading over the parts that just require me to memorize like random drug names. And that really is important for me because it kind of puts all the information in my head at once. I'm not saying this is something you should do because it does make you really tired. Sometimes I only have a couple of hours sleep before an exam. I don't recommend you doing that. This is something that I just have to do. I don't know if it's OCD or something I've gotten used to doing. It is quite nice when the exams are 2 PM because it means I can wake up at like 8 AM and go through the whole entire module one more time. And finally, once I've sat the exam and the exam's out of the way, I go and have an amazing time. I go eat, party with my friends, have a good time, and just celebrate. And once all of that is over, I come back to my desk for a final time. I promise this is final time. And what I do is I get all of my paper notes out and I actually scan them. So I actually have a portable scanner in the back over there. I have a tiny scanner, which I use to scan all of my notes. So I scan them and I put them online. And the reason why is I absolutely hate paper. After 5 years of medicine, doing a full medical degree, you're gonna end up with hundreds of different folders and hundreds of different papers. So I like just scanning it and uploading it to OneDrive, or you can upload it to Dropbox as well if you want. I definitely recommend doing that in case you lose your notes, or in case you're in hospital and you really want to know that random fact that you forgot. You can go on your phone, bring up the lecture, bring up the notes that you have, and just go over it one more time. If you don't have a scanner, you can use like one of those apps on your phone that you can take a picture of. That does take a bit longer, but I definitely recommend uploading all of your notes online. Or if you decide to use a tablet like an iPad or a Samsung tablet like me to use your notes, then go ahead and upload them all online because it makes it so much easier. But as my final point, which is probably my most important point, please try and find a strategy that works for you. Again, this is just me presenting to you what works for me for the last couple of years. But try and find something that works for you. What works for one man doesn't necessarily work for the next man. So try your best to test out different strategies. Maybe try out my strategy before a mock exam, so it's not obviously the real exam. Try out different strategies, see what works for you. Hopefully you can take a few things from this video to help you out. But once you do go to university, or you do start your A-levels or whatever, you eventually will learn the strategy that works best for you. But yeah, that's how I revise my exams. I'm probably gonna get back to making notes right now because I have so many lectures I need to go through. But let me know if you have any questions at all. If there's any aspect of this video that you find a bit confusing, please do let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already. Do me a favor, give the video a thumbs up. I have Instagram, I have Snapchat, so please feel free to follow me on there. Share this video with a friend if you found it useful, maybe it can help them out as well. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. I really hope this video has been somewhat informative and will help you write your own notes as well. And I'll see you guys in the next one.